ton of money depends on economic forecasting. Whatever question we may ask, we can find different people to tell us different things. Like, is inflation going up? Are we on the verge of a recession? How much higher can the national debt go before it cripples the economy? Or what happens if we raise minimum wage? Economists disagree with each other all the time, but I don't think any of them are crazy. They all make reasonable extrapolations from data we have available today. And there's a lot of things in the range of reasonable extrapolation that could be dead wrong. I want to show you one example from the past. In 1798, Thomas Malthus told us that if ordinary workers make enough money to feed their children, they'll overpopulate the world and we'll all starve to death. His contemporary, Adam Smith, told us that half the children born in England about that time died before they were old enough to join the workforce. Malthus thought that this very unfortunate situation should continue, otherwise the entire population would be wiped out. Let's take a look at that. The world population in 1800 was estimated at about 1 billion. Today, we have over 8 billion people. Now, are we starving? No, we have a global obesity epidemic. So I think Malthus' prediction has got to be the world's worst. And yet, it's not so different from what a lot of people are afraid of today, that if ordinary workers make enough money to stay above the poverty level, then they will somehow use up too many resources and we'll have an economic disaster. Let's take a look at what the poverty levels are in our country. This table gives the federal poverty level as a function of the household size. So for one person, you need an annual income of $15,650. And then if you have more people, say if you have children, then you need a higher income to get out of poverty. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Here's how many hours per week somebody would have to work at that just to get up to 100% of the poverty level. To see where we could be going wrong, let's go back and look at where Malthus went wrong. First of all, he told us that the best farmland gets cultivated first. And after that, as the population increases and we need a higher food supply, we go to the less fertile farmland. So the yields deteriorate and things get worse and worse. He also told us, and here I'll quote exactly, the passion between the sexes will always cause people to have as many children as possible. He said only misery and vice can limit the population. So by that he meant basically a lot of people have to die young. In addition, he told us that when poor working people get more money, their living standards don't improve. They just raise more of their children. So all of the increase in productivity or in wages, whatever, just goes into increasing the population. Now this was pretty much true from the year AD 1 to up until the Industrial Revolution, according to the historian Angus Madison. He told us that between these eras of 1 AD and then really 1500, then it started to kind of warm up to the Industrial Revolution of 1820 when it really took off, the population and the productivity grew very slowly. And the small increases that they had in productivity just went into increasing the population. So Malthus did have a lot of data to show that he could be right, but he obviously missed a few things. Today we have different fears. We're not afraid of starvation, but we have our ideas of supply and demand, that if there's more, well, if the price of something goes up, there will be less demand for it. So if the price of labor goes up, it is conceivable that there will be fewer jobs. Let's go back to Malthus for just a moment. We can see that he totally missed the boat on birth control, but he should have known better, because Adam Smith wrote in 1776 that richer people have fewer children and spend more money to raise and educate them. Malthus obviously thought that just wasn't significant, so he overlooked it. There could easily be things that we are overlooking. Now, the economists David Card and Alan Kruger did an extensive study of what happens when minimum wage goes up, mostly in terms of employment. A lot of states and cities have their own minimum wage, which is above the federal level. And when one state raises the minimum wage and their neighbors don't raise it, that gives us a good experiment to compare the employment rates. What they found was that raising minimum wage has very little effect on the total employment, and the small effect there is actually positive. People work more when they get more money. Again, back to Malthus, let's look at that increase, or that problem with farmland. He kind of missed the boat on the fact that people can be more productive, and also the farmland can be more productive. If you add more labor to your farming, we can use irrigation, fertilizers, and select the crops that are appropriate for the weather, and get greatly improved yields from the same land. Also, people can be more productive at any job. Now, I hear the most passionate fears about raising the labor costs for fast food. People are so afraid their hamburgers may cost more. Well, in fact, even McDonald's workers can be more productive over time. When McDonald's first opened, they offered hamburgers, French fries, and just a few drinks. Recently, I counted 54 individual items on their menu, and then they have a long list of combination meals. They have computer systems to keep up with the orders, so the employees watch the computer screens and know what to fix in what order. And recently, they also introduced kiosks, where the customers can come in and order and pay without assistance. There was a lot of concern that these kiosks would kill jobs for McDonald's workers. You can see here a report from CNN. As it turns out, it was just the opposite. People like the kiosks, and the kiosks were very successful at telling you, oh, you can add this and that to your order. People buy more food, and the McDonald's had to hire more kitchen workers. In addition, I tried these myself and found out you can customize your order on the kiosk, so that encourages me to go back more often. Well, old habits die hard. 170 years after Malthus told us that overpopulation was going to kill us, Paul Ehrlich wrote a book called The Population Bomb. That was required reading for my high school biology class. He said basically the same thing as Malthus. He just added, we'll have pollution, we'll have an energy crisis, and whatever. Basically, overpopulation is going to kill everybody. Okay, this is not happening. But in 1990, he wrote another book called The Population Bomb. I haven't read that one, but I assume he just kind of doubled down on his original forecast. Now I'd like to look at the overall expense to the economy from raising minimum wage. Adam Smith told us that slave labor is the most expensive of all. Now, people usually assume slave is the cheapest labor, but he pointed out if you have slaves, you have to give them enough food and supplies to keep them reasonably healthy, or they can't work for you. In addition, you have to pay the cost of forcing them to work. So why do we still do it? What he said was, the pride of man makes him love to domineer, and nothing mortifies him so much as to be obliged to condescend to persuade his inferiors. Wherever the law allows it, and the nature of the work can afford it, therefore, he will generally prefer the service of slaves to that of free men. So historically, people paid a lot of money for slave drivers when they could have just put that money into their workers and had probably more productivity. Today, our poorest workers are not exactly slaves, but there is a lot of coercion in making them work at minimum wage. If they don't have a job, what can they do? Well, they can live by charity, but that is a rough life. Or they can take a job in the illegal economy, such as selling drugs or some form of stealing. We spend a lot of money to catch them and punish them. These are the modern day equivalent of runaway slaves. They're trying to escape from the minimum wage life because it's a life of poverty. Now, once people get out of the legal economy, it's very hard to bring them back in. But I think it would be much less expensive to give every young person a good paying job as soon as they're old enough to work. I believe their lifetime productivity would be much higher if they start on some kind of career work before they learn how to hack into bank accounts on the internet. Some people still tell me that minimum wage is mostly for teenagers and they don't need the money because their families support them. Well, first of all, that isn't true. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, most minimum wage workers are adults. And even if it were true that all the minimum wage workers were teenagers, why not reward them for working productively instead of letting them slip off into the illegal economy? I think Thomas Malthus made the world's worst forecast because he assumed people could never be more productive than the ones he saw around him. Well, look around today. We have so many more products than the people in 1800 did. Now we've had almost 300 years of keeping some workers, at least, in poverty because we were afraid of some kind of disaster if they were well paid. I see no evidence for this, and a lot of evidence against it. So I'll make my own prediction that if we raise minimum wage, we will all benefit from increased productivity. And my belief is I couldn't possibly be any worse than Malthus at economic forecasting. Thank you for watching.